afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to welcome you today to our panel discussion, and we're going to be focusing on the unsung heroes of marketing operations. So for those of you who don't know Bright, we're a world-leading B2B agile marketing consultancy. We help businesses to unlock growth by improving marketing effectiveness and operational excellence through introducing greater agility. And joining us today are two incredible leaders. We've got Lisa Sutton, a CRO and marketing ops specialist, and Amanda Green, a seasoned expert in driving marketing efficiency and results. And together we're going to explore how agile marketing transforms operations and where we can deliver measurable results to create a culture of continual improvement. So we're going to cover some real life success stories. We're going to talk through some ways that you'll be able to boost your operational flows, and we'll discuss the latest trends and obviously talk about AI and automation and how they're shaping the future of marketing ops. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lisa and Amanda. So Lisa, it'd be great for you to give us a brief intro.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Lisa Sutton. I've spent 20 plus-ish years as focusing on marketing operations. I've done that across lots of different organizations, from large, global, complex matrix corporate organizations right the way through to smaller businesses, including startups and PE VC backed. I'm currently a chief revenue officer for a small transformation business, but also doing chief revenue type officer roles for a couple of other businesses across the travel industry, and also AI and renewable energy. And it's great to be invited to join the conversation today.
Thanks, Lisa. Amanda.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good to see you all. I've been working in data and operations for over 20 years as well. I'm currently in a role of marketing operations director and analytics. I've been doing sort of marketing operations for the past 10 years, and I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Thank you. And I'm Zoe, the MD at Bright. As I mentioned, we are an agile marketing consultancy, and today I am going to be facilitating this amazing discussion. So let's get started. It would be really good to talk about an example of how agile marketing's improved the speed or quality of decision making in your teams. Lisa, I wonder if we could start with you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the first thing I'd say is I'd always pick quality first over speed. A good example would be I was asked to lead a large-scale marketing transformation program for a global organization. It's a complex matrix organization. There were thousands of people involved from lots of different areas of the business, marketing, sales, technology, as examples. I think the biggest thing I would say is firstly start by establishing a common ground. So in order to address the needs and the pain points of all of those many people, we had to think about what the 80-20 rule was. So, think about how do you deliver 80% of what is common needs and then overlay that with 20% of personalization. And the way we did that was using agile methodology. So thinking about what are the actions that are going to have high impact, how do we prioritize the key tasks around that, and then how do we iterate that to scale. So picking, once we'd established what the common ground was, picking one or two key markets or key brands, and then building those out so we had effective case studies essentially, and then overlaying that with real-time measurement and data to iteratively improve that process so that each of the other markets that we then rolled out the transformation program to got benefit that was tailored to their specific needs.
That's a great example, Lisa. Thank you. And Amanda, what's your experience around agility in marketing?
Yeah, we brought in agility really when we were recognizing that some of the asks that we were getting from our leadership team were, quite heavy lifting for the size of the team that we are. So one example we had is that we wanted to launch doing newsletters to all of our customers, and our customer base is about 40,000 in this organization. And we were thinking about personalizing them, tailoring the content to all the different types of customers. There's lots of segmentation included in that. And this was going to be a massive heavy lifting task for our ops. So what we thought about is we use Agile to really break that down into small chunks of work. And what we looked at is what is the segment that we can easily get in our marketing automation. Then where do we see we're going to get the biggest engagement and impact from what we already know? And what we did is we did an iterative approach to launching a newsletter, but rather than doing we're going to do this in a month's time, we were able to deliver something like immediately in a few days, just by thinking smaller chunks. This is the big ask. We want all of our customers to be getting a newsletter, but actually let's look at one market, test it, and then see what the results are, and then continue from there. So that's how we started to plant the idea of how do we bring Agile into our marketing function.
Yeah, I think that's really important, actually, that starting small principle, test and learn, and make sure that you're able to show some results. It makes it a lot easier when you're having those discussions with your senior team and stakeholders as well. I mean, I guess with that in mind, are there any quick wins that teams can implement to remove operational bottlenecks and improve their marketing workflows? I think, Amanda, it'd be great to get your point of view on this.
Yeah, I think when I think about bottlenecks that commonly happen, I think one of them, when from a marketing operations perspective, is that we don't all have enough information to actually be able to deliver. So one of those, what we do, and I've done in multiple organizations now, is kind of created a brief template. So where can I get that information and make sure that, say, for example, a campaign manager is thinking, right, this is what I need. So getting them to make sure that they've already thought about their audience, they've already thought about maybe their cadence of what they're going to do. So creating forms, and you can use tools like Monday.com, Asana, Rike, to actually build out some forms. And then automate like assignment of that. So getting that information at the beginning, I think, really can help stop blocking things from a marketing operations. I think the other commonly thing I see is approval processes. Approvals can, if you've got one approver, that is obviously a bottleneck. But even if you've got multiple approvers, that can also create multiple bottlenecks. So thinking about what the approval workflow is going to look like. And actually create that framework, and then consistently use that across everything that we're doing in operations, so that we don't have any blockers with approvers, and you can again build all that into your workflow and your tools. But I think it's really key to make sure that you plan out and think these through and create those blueprints.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, sort of establishing those sort of service level agreements almost with your key stakeholders and those functions that you're working collaboratively with. I think all marketers will be nodding their head around approval blockers. Any way that we can improve that kind of information flow and speed up those cycles is really good. I think as well, it must be great to get some data behind that as well, where you've got maybe serial offenders that you need to kind of show the impact of what those delays cause to the your team and the wider business impact. Lisa, what's your perspective on this bottlenecks and how to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Amanda. Having a clear brief is really, really important. Gathering as much information as you can up front, because what the marketing operations team might think is what good looks like may differ wildly to what other teams perceive as what good looks like. So being crystal clear in terms of what the output looks like, what the expectations are, how you're going to measure that is really, really important up front to set the scene, essentially, to measure something that is going to be successful. From an implementation perspective, another quick win that I've always found fantastic is implementing a Kanban board. And start, you can start with that. It's a really simple, really effective tool. It's an excellent way to visualize how you manage your workflow, how you prioritize tasks, how you improve those different stages of those tasks right the way through to the end. And you can do, most of us are digital now, but you can do that physically, and that's going back to traditional days of whiteboarding, and sticky notes and things like that. Or the way I prefer to do it is through digital tools. So anything from platforms such as Trello or Jira, Asana, even Monday.com. But essentially what they do is they help you define your stages. So what have I got to do? What have I got that's in progress, and what is done? And you can customize those as well. So you can create a backlog. So if there are things that need to happen but perhaps aren't aligned with your top priorities in the first instance, you can have them in a backlog so that they're still there. You can put things in review, you can test them, and it just gives this really nice complete view for everybody to understand what tasks are in hand, what the detailed description is of each of those, who's responsible for them, who's accountable. And it just gives that immediate structure. It's very easy to implement, and it helps the team to really focus on deliverables and the value that those deliverables will bring.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that we often encounter at Bright is marketers are quite overwhelmed, which is a barrier to success in itself, because they have so many tasks and so many demands on their resource and time. So having that visual view of their workflow can really help with managing that kind of work in progress limits as well, to safeguard that they are focusing on the things that are going to add most value and align to the business priorities, and also just to make sure they're not being unrealistic in what they're taking on within the time available, so that they can have the space and time to be creative, be successful, and optimize what they're working on to make sure it's delivering the right results back. So I think those visual workflow management tools are very important, combined with the ceremonies as well around Agile. So thinking about how do you have those regular stand-ups in order to focus on removing the barriers within the workflow, and then if you need to take things either back into the backlog because they can't be delivered in that sprint, or add things that can go into the work in progress as a priority, because as we've already alluded to, things change rapidly, and being adaptable is a really important part of marketing operations today. So I think with that in mind, the other aspect that kind of comes up quite often, certainly when we're working with clients, is how do you introduce and foster experimentation within your marketing operations? And sometimes there are barriers as well to developing that, and it'll be really interesting to get your perspective on that. I think, Amanda, again, it would be great to hear from you and see what examples you might have.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think when we think about experimentation, people maybe don't understand it, or they're not sure, they fear it, and what that actually means. Should we be experimenting with our marketing budget and our capacity and our resources? So I think education is a massive barrier if people don't understand. So if anyone here is new and hasn't brought in Agile marketing yet, or isn't doing it quite as you think you should be, I think education is your number one. And I've actually just implemented it. We're on sprint 3 within my current organization, and it's a learning curve. It's an iterative. We've got to train everybody to get them to start understanding how it's effective, and they're going to start seeing that sprint on sprint. So I think that's one. And then the other barrier, you can't really bring in an experimentative culture if you haven't got the data. You really need to be able to analyze and test it. And I think it's really key to have a core role in your marketing operations that looks at insights and your data, and that you're tracking things so that you can actually look at that insights. And what that will do is we can actually start learning from those experiments and start voicing it and talking about where we're getting wins, but also where we might be failing. So I think that's those kind of two key things that you can resolve.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. You need to set some parameters around experimentation within your own team. So establish frameworks that everyone works in a reasonably consistent way. At Bright, we've got experimentation frameworks backed up with testing plans that will allow those experiments to be done in a risk managed way, because some experiments are bigger than others. For example, you know, we've worked with firms that are very ambitious and want to do big bet experiments, which can include quite a substantial element of risk but a high reward. So staging some, you know, risk management around the sprint outcomes is really important way of making sure that, you know, we are able to pivot or persevere if things are not necessarily going to plan. Then we can put in some, you know, performance KPIs that allow us to control that level of risk we're willing to take through the experiments. So as you say, it doesn't need to be like an uncontrollable kind of open-ended approach, that you can establish frameworks and put in those templates and repeatable processes to manage that. Lisa, what's your take on experimentation in marketing ops?
I mean, I think experimentation is and can be transformational, and I think, but it also can be quite scary if we're talking about it in the context of changing a culture. I would say the biggest step is starting to experiment and then building off the back of that. And I think one of the biggest barriers that we all face around doing that is fear of failure. You know, some people, and you know, certainly organizations can see it as a negative outcome to fail and actually avoid it rather than learn for it. And I think how to overcome that is to celebrate it. You know, you see every experimentation as a step towards growth ultimately. You know, every experiment provides, whether it's successful or it fails, it provides valuable insight. So, you know, a key thing that I always think is, whatever the outcome of the experiment, analyze it firstly through data, and secondly, share it, because the sharing becomes really powerful. And as long as you have a clear objective and a hypothesis around it, then the outcome is valuable regardless. There's actually a good book that I read recently called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And what James Clear talks about is how tiny changes that you repeat constantly lead to significant results over time, which is the experimentation culture, right? So it's breaking it down into micro moments, mini experiments that build over time that make the task more approachable and achievable. So I'd thoroughly recommend that if that's not already been part of your reading lists.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Lisa. And we're going to share that reading list as well after the event. If anyone's got anything to add to it, obviously we'd love to hear from you. I think everyone here is quite keen to kind of collate their knowledge and share it. So yeah, we will share that out after this event. But yeah, thank you. That's a great book. I guess just to build on your growth culture kind of comment, I think that's one of the things we see a lot as well in the work we do. Not always in, but it tends to be in those larger organisations, which maybe their cultural doesn't allow for that kind of experimentation and curiosity, I would call it. On the flip side, it's like, how do you encourage that curiosity, foster that within your teams, and also like not just within marketing, but also those functional teams or areas that they are working closely with, so that it's you know, the marketers are able to have that kind of psychological safety, you know, overcome that fear of failure, as you say, so that they're able to use the insights to really like move things forward and improve and engage those audiences that they're trying to reach. So I think that culturally that could be one of the areas that we see as a real challenge, and sometimes that's a leadership issue actually rather than grassroots. So yeah, I do think that marketers need to think about their leaders and how they role model that kind of growth mindset and culture, and you know, encourage that for their teams, so that they genuinely do feel able to experiment and move forward with that. Amanda, have you got any any books or any content you want to add? I thought we might have a few tips.
No, I mean, I personally, I quite like podcasts. A lot quicker. You can listen to them while you're having your coffee. So there's one called the Agile Mentors podcast by Brian Milner. Hundreds of little 15-minute podcasts that really help understand principles around Agile and how to bring it into your organization and the challenges. And I think there's definitely there is something in there about experimentation and that talking about the observation, the hypothesis, and then getting your result and how you talk about your results. So I think, yeah, some really good tips in there.
Right. Yeah, I love a podcast. Thank you for that. So I guess that leads on nicely, actually, because we sort of started to talk a bit about the data. So measuring what matters, and I guess getting into a bit more about the metrics that marketing ops use and what they should prioritize really to help them drive that high performance and demonstrate accountability. Amanda, this feels like a great one for you to start with.
Yeah, I think we talk about priorities of what we're measuring in marketing operations, and I've got a really focus around efficiency gains, so productivity of the marketing operations. So we are all driving towards profit, for the business. And by doing that, by becoming more efficient with how you do your marketing, how you run your campaigns, how you run your projects, is obviously going to save a lot of time. So I will do time on project delivery, time on campaign delivery. So I would look at, and also between the funnel stages. So what's the time between the MQL and SQL, and what can ops do to improve that time it takes so that we eventually increase the number of conversions that become to closed won. So productivity is kind of a key one for me. And then also my teams in marketing operations, we've always been very much responsible for looking at ROI. So how we're looking at our technology spend and our spend with agencies, particularly if you're a smaller organization with a small budget. If you're spending a lot on agencies, you need to be making sure you're very efficient with those agencies. You're measuring the utilization. Is it the right agency? Are you reviewing it? Is it is that the right choice for your business? Are they located? There's lots of things you can do. So I would measure my marketing operations on how effectively we work with agencies. And you talked about accountability. So with marketing ops, we are often on the side of, we're supporting our marketing teams on their KPIs, but also we are responsible for optimization of our business. So how do we manage leads? How do we manage campaigns? So I will put a measurement in there in my marketing ops on the reduction of the challenges and the problems. So we'll have a backlog in our sprint, and we'll talk about actually, are we chipping away at the problems and delivering? And it's a really good motivator for your marketing ops. If they feel that they're delivering solutions on a regular basis as part of the sprints, and they're being measured on that, then it's a really good way of showing and demonstrating why we have a marketing operations function in the business to deliver improvements and optimization. So they're actually what I would prioritize in marketing ops, although there are many things that we do measure.
Yes, of course, many measures, and maybe that's something we'll touch on after this. But Lisa, how about your perspective on what to measure?
Yeah, I mean, many measures is a good one, right? I mean, you can have too many measures, like you can have too many KPIs and too many things, and too many reports for report's sake. And so I think being less is more, I think, but making sure that you've got the right metrics and the right measurements that ladder up to the wider strategic objectives of the business, and then link into wider marketing initiatives or your team's marketing operations initiatives. I think regardless, for me, data is hugely important, and at a very basic level, just having the right data quality metrics in there, because the quality of the data essentially underpins all of the other metrics. The reliability of the data and the accuracy of the data effectively result in whether you interpret the data into how you measure the metrics in the right way or the wrong way. So if you've got poor data quality, then your team is misinformed, they're making the wrong decisions, there's missed opportunities, it's both ends of the scale. So, in my view, as a minimum, you invest in data quality metrics, you make them actionable, make them accurate, regularly review through data audits, set data hygiene standards. So I think for me, that's as a minimum. The other one at the other end of the scale, I suppose, and it depends on the size of the organization, is around customer lifetime value. So understanding what the long-term value is of your customers and the effectiveness of your marketing efforts and how those support those at different stages of the customer journey, you know, whether it's acquiring, engaging or retaining customers. So, you know, things like customer lifetime value, CAC, retention rate, churn rate, all of those, you know, are equally, in my view, as important in the marketing operations team as they are for wider areas of the business.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I think, yeah, particularly in B2B, we see a lot of emphasis where we've got high value and long sales cycles, you know, on that customer lifetime value piece being very important, because a lot of the revenue comes from the existing base. And obviously CAC being still an important measure, but ultimately we want to make sure we're not like dipping in terms of our lifetime value or declining. Because that's an indicator that things are not necessarily going as well as we think they are within the, you know, in the management and a delivery of our services or products to our customers. So I think those metrics are all really interesting in terms of where marketers should be, you know, focusing their time. I suppose one thing that occurs to me is like thinking about your audience when you're reporting. And communicating, because what the board or senior leadership team might want to know in terms of the metrics and measures is probably going to be very different to maybe your sales audience or your own, you know, your marketing team itself, who are looking at, as Amanda said, you know, that continual optimization. Have you got any thoughts on that, Amanda?
Sorry, say that again.
On you know, what measures are most effective to report on to, you know, the different audiences within the business?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think when we're talking about the efficiency gains, where I am currently, my objective is to bring in efficiency within the organization, and that's why I sort of draw back to the productivity. So my actual senior leadership team want to hear, like, where are we actually saving money and where are we actually seeing that. So that's why I said that the productivity is sort of top of mind when you've got a marketing operations function within the business. But and then Lisa, what's your... Sorry,
Amanda, carry on.
No, that's okay. I was only going to say, just that when you're talking to the rest of your marketers are really focused on the getting, you know, optimizing in their campaigns. So obviously the metrics around that would be more relevant to those marketers.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that, the other thing that I always found is critically important is making sure that the metrics that you and your team measure ladder up to the wider objectives of the organization, but almost doing it the other way around. So understanding what the strategic goals and objectives are of the organization, and then working that back retrospectively to your team. And if we're using it in the example of marketing operations, how does every metric or measurement that you're using support and enable delivering the metric or the measurement that let's use the example of the leadership team want to ultimately achieve?
Yeah. Right. Thank you. So I guess, you know, after having looked at metrics and measures, that data side of marketing ops is obviously crucial, but thinking about the culture as well and how obviously that supports, then what kind of practical steps can leaders take, you know, to break down where there are silos between the teams across an organization? So Amanda, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, when I think about silos, I think that it's really, you've got to look at and understand why you've got silos in your organization. And a technique, I think, is to think about it as, is there a communication breakdown? Is there potentially accountability not being recognized, you know, across the organization? And I just wanted to reference, I think many people may be aware of this book, but there's something called the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and it's got some really good points in there about looking at your team directly and seeing if there's any silos within your own team, and then also thinking it wider across your organization to see if you've got silos around that. And I think kind of the highlights on that is the accountability, your commitment, your attention to results, and whether you've got any kind of conflict or trust. I think finding out and analysing that and making sure you understand it before you get into solutioning is really important. Also, just to think about cultures. You know, silos traditionally happen, from my experience in global organisations, we can have silos from US to China to UK, which are just, you know, born from time differences. So just really thinking about, okay, how can we improve communication and how can we improve visibility across the organisation? I think the Kanban board sort of was one of those points, right, about how do we increase visibility across the business and talk about our wins. That really helps. I've done things like clinics and you know, different kind of forums to kind of share that information. That often breaks down the silos as people start to understand the different roles and the activities that you're running within the team. But I think it's really key to define who those stakeholders are and then think about how you're going to communicate with each of those stakeholders. Is a good place to start to improve those silos.
Thank you, Lisa.
I mean, I think silos are inevitable in any organisation, right? To Amanda's point, you know, you can even have them in your team or you can have them in large scale businesses. I think the key is breaking them down. And, you know, the best way to do that is lead by example, because we can all break those silos down. So, you know, leaders set the tone for the entire organisation. And you know, the way I like to think of this is regularly engage with different teams outside of your own team. You know, show willingness to learn about what other teams are doing, to understand what their goals are, understand what their challenges are. You know, I've done things with, you know, my previous teams where we've invited team members from other departments to participate and learn about what we do, or, you know, spend a day in the life of us. And, you know, I've encouraged my team members to do the same so that you can really understand from both sides of the coin what each other is doing. So I think lead by example is really, really important, and always maintain that all the way through, showing that integrity, that willingness to learn, that openness and that transparency. And the other one that's linked to openness is open communication channels, I think. So, you know, the more transparent and the more open you can be, where you can be, that's what builds trust. That reduces miscommunication, it enables knowledge sharing, it takes away the potential of having silos. And, you know, simple things like shared messaging platforms, or, you know, to Amanda's point, you know, regular updates. You know, we've done things like Q&A sessions, show and tells, you know, reward and recognition, micro reward and recognition. It doesn't have to be a bonus. It can be, you know, mini celebrations of success or other team members outside of your own that you recognise in wider cross-functional forums. All of that leads into how you build that trust, build those relationships, and start to break down some of those silos where they might exist.
Yeah, 100%. We see, you know, that need to really, you know, focus on communication as being a powerful tool to help with some of those silos. And as you say, silos are part of, you know, they're part of life. They kind of can come and go as well. But our job as leaders is to figure out like how we can break them down if they are barriers to our efficiency and effectiveness. So yeah, understanding where we can build those cross-functional bonds and keep the communication flowing two ways, so that kind of closed feedback loop allows us, as you say, to pick off those key learnings that will also help improve what we're doing as marketers. At the same time, you know, we keep our key stakeholders engaged and informed, and allow them to be part of the solution where we might have challenges that we're facing in our go-to-market approach. So yeah, I think that's really interesting what you've both kind of said, and I love that stuff that you talked about, Amanda. You know, those dysfunctions of a team. I think, you know, we've all come up against challenges in our relationships in work, etc., and the way that we work with other teams. And it's great to know that there's like a reference points we can look at and help us to, you know, understand and take those kind of perspectives into account.
I think if it's a challenge, if it is a challenge and it is something you identify as a problem in your team, then actually making it an objective within your team, so a personal objective to improve their their stakeholder management and how they collaborate in across the business. I think that you'll get more you'll get a buy-in with that and impact, right? If they know that is something that's very important.
I agree. I think as well, like that understanding of your team and their sort of where their strengths and weaknesses, but also, their personality traits and types can be quite useful as well to help with some of those areas where you might have some challenges. So yeah, you can, getting to know people, not just as work colleagues, but, a bit more what makes them tick is really important part of that process. So I guess with that kind of in mind around collaboration and adaptability, I was wondering if you could share any examples really of initiatives of where you've successfully helped to increase collaboration and help teams to adapt better. Lisa, you got anything you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking about, if you're working for an organization where there's lots of different departments, the simplest thing that I've always done and always used is around cross-functional meetings. And I don't necessarily mean, spending an hour in a meeting room. I mean, finding ways where you can get cross-functional teams together to understand and know and learn around what each other's doing. And you can do that through retrospectives, you can do that through discovery sessions, you can do that in the traditional methods of, let's have a monthly meeting. But I'm pretty sure, most people like me are quite sick to death of having back-to-back meetings all day, every day. So, you can find ways to meet the meeting and sharing of information ultimately. So, how can you find, portals or forums or SharePoints or things where you've got, knowledge hubs, libraries, information, up to date, dashboards or metrics. Keep it simple, but certain things that are going to appeal to other teams that are going to be of interest that, they might not be directly accountable for, but they will see benefit from ultimately. So in my mind, it boils back to that transparency, that knowledge sharing and that openness again. But having worked, in large organizations where, they are matrix cross-functional, it's about how do you enable people with enough of the right information that they gain benefit from.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We're seeing more and more as people's kind of agile marketing operations matures, like that focus on sort of establishing those centers of excellence so that they can kind of find a way of collating and sharing those kind of vital pieces of information and IP, kind of sharing frameworks and things like, successful experiments or, what they learned from things and the hypotheses that they've set. As, those are like very specific things, but also like being able to allow other teams and departments to easily access that information and understand, what's happening in their world at that point in time. Even simple things sometimes like having events calendars and diaries can really help ease that kind of communication flow. So yeah, I agree. I think that it doesn't always have to be like broadcast comms, as I would call it, but sometimes allowing people to have those access to where they can go and self-serve and find those tools, templates, frameworks and kind of nuggets of information is really important. So moving on to thinking about the future of marketing operations, and this is obviously going to be one of those hot topic areas, and we wanted to talk a little bit about how AI and automation is really transforming the way that marketing ops is managed. So I thought we kind of get stuck in and hear kind of both your experiences really around AI and automation. So Lisa, what's your perspective on this?
Well, I mean, my view is it's rapidly reshaping and will continue to reshape marketing operations. I think sometimes when the words AI or when the word AI is bandied around, then it can be used as a generic term. I think there's a proportion of people that don't necessarily fully understand, the world. We are still learning as a world. AI is evolving, firstly. And so I think, certainly from an agile marketing perspective, being crystal clear in terms of what are your use cases and how can AI or machine learning enable those is really, really important. But, some of the biggest wins I've seen with leveraging AI so far from a marketing context is around, improved data insights or campaign personalization or streamlining of processes. And ultimately, what it's done is deliver faster, smarter, more data-driven decision making. And what that, of course, does is then frees up time and mental capacity for more strategic planning and creativity within your teams. So I think, a couple of good examples that, I've used in the past is how we've moved from static data and reporting to real-time data and reporting, so you can get immediate insights off the back of that. You can make real-time improvements through understanding customer behavior, engagement through your marketing campaigns, and then you can tailor and adapt those off the back of that. Campaign optimization and personalization is another one. So, I'm sure in, everybody's businesses on this call, there's vast amounts of customer data and it's coming in all the time. But obviously, the customer expectation and us as individuals is that what we see in the content that we're presented with is highly personalized for individuals. So, leveraging AI, machine learning in the context of marketing operations is ensuring that every touch point in the customer journey is relevant and personalized to that that individual user. Now that's easier said than done, of course, but certainly, with machine learning and with AI, a lot of that can be automated, and that can make it faster, better, and more efficient and scalable. And the other one I'd say is process, which is a big one. Start with process. There are more often than not repetitive tasks that the team are doing that are time consuming, even if it's basic tasks, or if it's, something slightly bigger like email marketing or lead scoring or segmentation or workflows, actually thinking about how you can implement small AI tools or technologies to automate some of those, then will enable you to scale much quicker. But what I would say, my biggest advice of all is start small. So think about the small wins. What's going to give you and your team more time to think? What's the additional value that it's going to bring? But, don't see it as AI is this big beast. Actually, what it is, what are the small tactical things that I can do? A bit like what James says in the book, how can you iteratively build on those over time to create that longer term value?
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and certainly something we would agree with. At Bright, we've developed an AI activation framework to help marketers really with thinking about how they can adopt and demonstrate value from some of these newer tools that they want to test and want to use to help them improve both operational efficiencies, but also, as you say, look at where they can be used within the buyer journey effectively. So taking those key use cases and running some tests, and then doing some evaluation really to make sure that the AI tools that they are looking to either onboard really do serve a purpose, like where have they got gaps in their existing journeys, etc., where AI might help them rather than just AI for the sake of it. But also thinking about their existing MarTech stack and the tools that they have within it, and what AI functionality has been released or is being released that they need to, again, test, figure out quite quickly where they genuinely add value, and then obviously scale that through their operations. So agile marketing is, very helpful, and as taking that test and learn approach is kind of fundamental. So activating these different tools and testing them is something that's really built in. Amanda, what's your experience with AI so far?
Yeah, so I think it's true that companies are just starting to learn and adopt AI, and I think investment in AI technology is becoming more is becoming more and more. In fact, I did have a look, and McKinsey had a report around, a third of respondents said that AI was now being used in at least one function in their business, and that 40% of them said that they were going to add investment to AI specifically, and that is true. And just joining STEN, the organisation I'm currently in, we have that in the budget for 2025. It is specifically around how are we going to bring in AI to gain efficiency within the organisation. So yeah, I do definitely think that. Lisa pointed on all the great, where you can bring AI into marketing operations and marketing and personalizing the customer experience. I'm particularly, we use Notion, which is a tool for like a workplace. You talked about, you've got your SharePoints and your different places where you can create your knowledge hub, but actually Notion also, it's actually like an assistant, right? You can actually use it to help planning, to help build out workshops, and I'm finding that quite and also an extra useful piece of technology, because it's actually when we're having our meetings in marketing operations and we're doing some ideation, and marketers can use this too, then I do find you can ask it questions and it brings up some topics to have as a discussion. And I think that's a really that's kind of really making us have more efficient, more good conversations within those workshops and those meetings. And I think that is something that I would never have said I would be using a year ago. And now I'm actually benefiting, and actually I was probably one of those bring something like that initially, but now I'm actually seeing the benefits, how it is facilitating conversations within the business.
Yeah, I think there's some really good emergent use cases on some of the tools that are becoming more integrated into our work life, like Microsoft Copilot as well is similar approach. And just things like providing those recordings and notes and actions from a call can help to make sure meetings are more effective and the outcomes are achieved rather than outputs, shall we say. So yeah, I think there's some really good tools emerging for productivity and efficiency across the business landscape, not just marketing actually, but joining up people's ability to work together. We ran a leadership dinner about a month ago, and our topic was around AI in marketing and how marketing leaders were approaching it. And it was really interesting because they felt like there was a lot of excitement, but also apprehension. There's a heavy emphasis on efficiency, as you mentioned, and I think that marketing leaders felt like there needed to be some focus as well on empowering their teams to get the most from these tools so that they can meet those kind of targets. And there was a little bit of it felt like people were saying these tools, we're getting access to these tools, or these tools are being given to our teams, but they don't know how to make the most of them. So we feel like we're lagging behind on our ability to demonstrate value. Is that something that's a concern for either of you within the teams that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my perspective, the key thing when you introduce tools is not to introduce them as tools, but to introduce them as enablers and be really clear in terms of what benefit and value they're going to bring to the individual or the team, firstly. So talk in the context of value add, as opposed to this is X tool that can do these technology-driven related processes or things. I think the biggest thing with any piece of technology is around how do you prioritize training, adoption and understanding of it, and then how do you continuously measure the benefit and the results of it. And actually, with marketing operations, quite a lot of the time you have to continuously demonstrate the value that you bring. So it's not just a case of we're implementing a new tool or a new technology. Actually, we're constantly measuring ongoing the benefit and the value that it brings to the wider organization after it's been implemented, as much as selling it as to why it would make sense in the first place, and then the first sort of month or two after it's been implemented. So that continuous training and adoption, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, to give people that empowerment. Otherwise there was a sort of sense of overwhelm, and not able to sort of make the most of those tools that are becoming available to them. Amanda, what do you think about how marketing teams should prepare to adopt these technologies without kind of disrupting their operational flow?
I
negatively, I guess. I mean, it might be some positive disruption, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think there's that we can't deny that there's always going to be a little bit of disruption when you're bringing in anything new within your marketing team. And I think what you can do is, is start small, do something, that won't have so much of an impact on the day-to-day run of your marketers, and then that will get them sort of familiar and understand how adoption works. And then when they're when you get that right, you can then obviously use that as your blueprint to say, right, okay, these are the, every time we bring in anything new, whether it's a process or a technology, the marketers know what to expect. And I think you'll get a much better adoption from that. And actually just thinking about multiple ways that you can help them by making sure that they can get you take feedback on how that went, and then use that to adapt how you help them adopt new technologies without being too disruptive. I think it's also, we should think about seasonality, like when we're bringing in anything new like a technology, like actually thinking about what is happening with the marketing, with the roadmap and the things that we've got coming and planned. We've just had Diwali last week, we've got Thanksgiving coming up, there's lots of other activities that can disrupt the marketing activity in the roadmap. So it's really key that in marketing operations, when we're thinking about this, that we're also mindful of the impacts that can have when planning to bring out these new projects that optimize how our marketers work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And actually, conversely, one thing that came up on the leadership dinner was stealth AI. I don't know if that's something you guys are familiar with, and how to manage that as well, because obviously some people are more comfortable than others as well within the organization, and the sort of downstream impact really of that stealth adoption, and when is the right time to I guess take a view on it. Lisa, is that something you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you're producing or editing AI generated content so it looks more human-like, it can be beneficial because, you're not having to spend lots of time creating new content. But I think it can definitely humanize, but I think we've got some challenges to overcome with some of that so that it doesn't look fake. You have to, same with anything in AI, right? You have to write the rules appropriately, and then you have to make sure that there needs to be a level of human intervention to ensure that the output is accurate, timely, relevant, and real. So I think they're key considerations when thinking about, generating content, as an example, through stealth.
Yeah, I agree. Like, we've got a bit of a philosophy at Bright around the AI sandwich. Don't know if you've heard of that one before, but the bread needs to be the human element. So that proper briefing, prompting, making sure it's clear what our outcomes are that we're looking for. The AI is the filling, and then obviously we need another layer of bread, which is the human review and curation, to make sure, particularly with content. I mean, we've all seen a lot of content being spewed out on various channels that we can clearly identify as not being very well humanized, as you alluded to, Lisa. So yeah, that AI sandwich is quite an important element of how our teams and our client teams are dealing with the AI.
And I think it's definitely useful for marketing and content creation, when efficiency and personalization are really, really important. And that sandwich allows the AI to handle the repetitive tasks, while the human element is, sort of ensuring the messaging and the nuancing around it. I think, by doing it with that approach, then you maintain the quality of the content and you enable teams to scale without compromising on authenticity.
Yeah, great. We have got 5 minutes left. I've just had a look and we haven't had any questions, but if anyone's got anything they would like to ask of Amanda and Lisa, then you've got a couple more minutes. Please do pop them in the chat or the QA. We will be sharing, as I mentioned, a reading list after this, and if anyone would like the briefing note from our recent leadership dinner, which focused around AI adoption. We can share that too, along with our AI activation framework, which is very helpful when you're thinking about operationalizing AI. And then I guess if there's any final thoughts or top tips, it would really be great to get your kind of number one kind of tip from both. Amanda, have you got anything you'd like to share?
I think a number one tip is I really go back to that education piece. I think really just making sure that the organisation understands Agile. And I know Bright have got support businesses in doing that, but I'm really I think really making sure that everybody actually understands what experimentation is, take risks, bring in that growth mindset into your organisation. I think that's number one, is get the education.
Yeah, great tip. Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I think start small is really important with Agile. By doing so, you reduce risk, you can adapt, learn over time, you can manage your resources efficiently, and ultimately what it then does is helps to create that cultural buy-in. So, the continuous evolution of test, learn, optimize, iterative improvements, and just thinking, if we start small, have an open growth mindset, then ultimately those gains will build and build over time.
Yeah, great. I guess my top tip would be pretty similar in that, understand how the Agile marketing principles can be applied within your environment and adapt them, because it's not the same as implementing Dev Agile. You do need to kind of think about how it's going to work within your marketing operating model. And be iterative, be data driven, and really focus on those feedback loops, and keep your customer in mind so that they're always kind of getting relevant, engaging content and campaigns. On that note, I think it's perfect time to kind of wrap up and say thank you. Oh, hold on, we've got a question. Bradley, you've got a question, or sorry, just saying thank you. Okay, great, thank you. No, thanks for everyone who's joined us, and thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you very much, Lisa. I think it's been a really interesting discussion and really enjoyed getting to kind of talk through some of these issues and share some of your learnings and experience has been great. So thank you, and everyone have a really good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.